All right, let's look at color with our lemon slices. If you are in 5th and 6th grade, you're going to recognize this. We've talked about this year. We filled it out together. We've already used it. But some of these concepts for my 3rd and 4th graders are going to be familiar to you as well. Let's talk just a minute about how colors work together. You're going to have a lot of freedom in coloring this, and I say that, and then I pull out the color theory sheet, and it feels like there's less freedom, but the neat thing is how you apply this in your choices can give you the result maybe that you're looking for. So let's talk a minute for how that works. We have our color wheel here, our primary colors, our secondary colors. We have talked about warm and cool colors. We all know about that. If you split your color wheel in half, you have your cool colors on one side, your warm on the other. Those are simply colors that make you feel warm when you look at them, like a fire for the warm colors, or feel cool when you see them, kind of like the rainforest might make you feel. 5th grade and 6th grade, we've talked about complementary and analogous colors as well. Complementary colors are colors that are opposite on the color wheel. I have some examples down here. Orange and blue are opposite. They're directly across. Yellow and purple, red and green are opposite colors. These colors make the other color look brighter when you put them side by side. We've talked about how you might see them on a sports team. You might see them when you celebrate a holiday. These colors are chosen often because they make each other look brighter. They're very impactful. Analogous colors, kind of the opposite of those, they're colors that are side by side on the color wheel. And these colors have a more harmonious look when you put them together. So green's analogous color would be yellow and blue. Purple's analogous color would be blue and red. As long as they're touching on the color wheel, orange would be red and yellow. Then they're analogous colors. And value is just the lightness to darkness, darkness to lightness of one color. So as we think about this, as you're choosing the color that you want to do your lemon, we're going to think about our lemon first, and then we're going to use color theory to choose our background. It will make it more impactful if we apply our color theory and what we know about it. So let's start with this. First of all, choose your supply. This was watercolor. I sprinkled some salt on there. I'll talk about that in just a minute. The other two were done with oil pastel, which would be pretty akin to crayon. Colored pencils would be beautiful as well. I want to look at these two examples first. These are both the colored pencil, the oil pastel or crayon route. They blend really nicely together. But the first thing I did was I chose the color of my lemon. I decided to make one realistic, right? So I have this one that's actual yellow. And then this one I chose warm colors on the inside. So you could have many shades or values of one color like I did here. I actually have 3 different values of yellow. I have a dark yellow. I think this is actually the wrong 3. I have a dark yellow, a light yellow, and a medium yellow that I used. But if I wanted to create some variation and I don't have 3 of the same color, then over here I used all warm colors. I used yellow, orange, and red the same way that I used these 3 colors. You don't have to limit yourself to 3, and you don't even have to use 3. You can use one color as I did in watercolor, and I just did more watercolor here and more water as I went down just to get a variation, to get a little bit of value added to the color. So I'm going to show you how I was working on this yellow one first. It would be the same thing over here. I just happen to be using 3 of the same color, but you could be using 3 different colors like I did here. And here's what I meant earlier by adding some texture in with your color. I drew these in on a smoother surface than I have now. So this one's showing a little bumpy. So I have some natural texture already starting to show through just because of the surface of my table. But I started dark and I went around where I had placed some of these juice pouches. I reserved my darker color for the background, and I reserved my brighter color for these juice packets. And I actually went ahead and highlighted them first. And then I would go back in with this color, and I'm adding, just not pressing down as hard as I go towards the edge. And here's the thing that I really like about oil pastels and crayons is you can really blend your colors, kind of almost similar technique as paint. It looks a little different, obviously. And as I went, I just left some white spaces where these seed packets would be. And then after I colored these in pretty well, and I'm coloring in the same direction, I feel like I talk about that every time too, but this just makes it look like good workmanship. Doesn't create confusion for the viewer's eye, makes the eye, the viewer, look from one section to the other. Then I went back over with my medium color, and I filled in a little more. At this time, I'm going to start on the outside edge, and I'm going to work my way in to the darker sections. And I'm just filling in some of those whites. I'm still going around the seed pouches, or I'm sorry, the juice packets. And I'm just adding color in and making it a little more solid. I can press down a little more because this is naturally a lighter color, so it's already looking lighter, but I like to carry this color all the way down into the dark section too. You can totally just layer them, keep dark and light separate, but if you overlap the colors, it just shows a little more continuity. All right, and then I went back with this medium color on the seed pouches. So I used my medium color, my medium value with the dark and the light, and it totally looks different when you use it that way. Sorry, I've got to peel a little of this paper back. There we go. And you're kind of building up like you would with paint as well, keeping the shape going. And then for my final step, after I had colored this in, I feel like I colored these in a little more solidly than I've colored this one in. I think I'm rushing, but you don't need to rush. After I've colored in these sections, you might go back with your darkest color that you started with down here, and you might add just a tiny bit of a highlight around these seed packets. It's all about going in layers. So I started with my darkest color, I worked my way up, my medium color, I worked my way down, and then I filled in on the inside with those. And then I used just a brown for the seed on this one. So with that in mind, let's just look. I won't talk you all the way through it, but same here. I did the opposite. I put dark on the outside, light on the inside, but this variation, this value, I think is really helpful also in showing depth of our picture. So I started with the yellow, and then I faded it here and then picked up the orange, and I faded it here and picked up the red. But if you can tell, I went back with my orange and I went into the red a little with it, and I went back with my orange and I went into the yellow. This medium color, this middle line here, is probably the color you're going to use the most. And then I used my lightest color to highlight some of these seed packets. And I used my darker color to go back and add the shape of them in. All right, on both of these, when I was done coloring, then I went to my background. So this is yellow. I used the complement of yellow, or the opposite across the color wheel. I used purple because purple was really going to make that yellow pop. So I added purple to the background. And you can tell I colored this way with my purple, and I started dark, and then I let my value get lighter as I went to the outside. So I went this way first, and then I cross-hatched, which means exactly what I did. I went one direction, and then I went the other direction back over it. Kind of create some texture and some pattern in the back. I forgot to point this out earlier, but I used that light yellow also to color in the rind here. And then we had pointed out earlier that the very outside edge was darker again. There was a lighter section of the rind and a darker. On this one, I just used warm colors here, cool color in the background. So I just split it between warm and cool. I used my color theory to know that a warm color against a cool color was really going to show up a lot. And the same thing, this one's colored with a little less value, a little more solidly, but you get the idea. And lastly, I used watercolor on this one, and I think I was a little less purposeful in my color choices, except I wanted to do something off the wall, something really not realistic. Not that the warm colors were very realistic, but I went for blue. I've never seen the inside of a blue fruit before, but I used blue and yellow together. But in this yellow, I used warm colors, if you see that. And then I used the complement of blue. So these two were touching. I chose to, or I'm sorry, an analogous of blue, not a complement. So I used a color that is side by side. So blue and purple are side by side on the color wheel. This picture is more harmonious and calming than these pictures. They create a little more contrast, which would be a little more energy. This is a little more chilled because they're analogous colors. Blue and purple are analogous, side by side. I wanted to show one other thing with this watercolor. You guys have probably, most of our classes we've done this before, but I'm going to use my drawing as an example. Let me pull out my watercolors. I just want to show you, in case we haven't done this salt trick before, I wanted to show you how this works. So I'm going to add a little bit of purple out here on the edge. So if you're wanting to create texture in your artwork, this is a really great way to do it. And then let's see, I'm going to put the analogous just like I did in my other watercolor. I'm going to put the blue here. Remember that if you bump these two colors right up against each other and they're still wet, they're going to bleed together a little. So you want to leave just a tiny bit of space or let them dry a little in between. I'm not doing everything. And let's put a little yellow in here. So on this with a watercolor, to show these seed pouches, we talked about how to do it with the other supply of crayons or pastels. That would be the same with colored pencils. But I wanted to show you how to create the same look. I would probably do it all one color with the watercolor. And then if you could go back, I'm going to go back with a little orange. And I'm going to highlight a few of these sections. On this, I like to highlight behind the seed packet. Create that definition by highlighting the background instead of the foreground of it. So you get the idea. You would color that in. Here's the salt trick. This is just regular table salt. I'm going to pour, it would probably be ideal to pour a little in a dish. I'm going to pour just a tiny bit in my hand. And wherever you want to show extra texture, you'll sprinkle the salt. You need to be completely done watercoloring before you do this. And you want to put it on there while the paint is still wet. And then you'll let that dry all the way. When it's completely dry, it will simply wipe off your paper and be gone. But here's what it looks like after it's dried. The salt actually absorbs some of the watercolor and it created the texture for me. So I accidentally got a little, I still think it looks cool, but I was trying to get the texture in here. So however you want to do it, if you want to add some texture to your background too, but that's kind of a fun way to do it. If you have watercolor, you want to use watercolor or those jars that we've soaked our markers in, if that's what you're using. So 3 different ways to approach painting your artwork today. Colored pencil, pastels, watercolor. I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with. Remember, you can always email me a picture, share it with your classroom teacher. I would really love to see some of these. I want to hear how you like this project too. It's one of my favorite, like I said, so I cannot wait. I look forward to seeing your creations. I hope you guys have a wonderful week.